We are pleased to be joined here on Sports Spectrum by Andre Davis, the former NFL wide receiver, kickoff return specialist, as you might know as well, and played many years in the NFL from 2002 to 2009. Andre, welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Jason, thanks for having me, man. This is a crazy time we're living in, but anytime we have the opportunities to really share stories, I'm always in for it. So I'm glad to be here.
It is a crazy time. We're in the middle of a pandemic, which isn't going to go away anytime soon, I don't think. Hopefully the curve starts to flatten a lot more as we get through this thing, but it's still going to be there in the midst of, it's going to change how we go about the rest of our lives. I really believe that in different forms. I want to start with Niskayuna High School, because my wife would be, hitting me across the head if I didn't start with that, because my wife is a Niskayuna High School grad from Schenectady, New York. A few years before you, but you are a Niskayuna grad, grew up in Schenectady, right? Is that area?
Yes, grew up in Niskayuna, the town that it's named for. And that was the amazing thing, I think, when me and you first met. Like, that was our the common denominator, which is very odd for many people out there. No one's ever heard of Niskayuna. So for those of you who are from small towns, you start with the biggest city that is near you. And so to start in Albany, New York, and then break it down to Schenectady, New York, and then ultimately into Niskayuna. So for us to have that in common was an awesome thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm from Albany too, but mine goes a little bit south of Albany in a little town called Ravenna, which you may have heard of, but it's
Yep.
talking about small town America. Ravenna is small town America. So that's awesome. We have that in common. I really want to go right to just recently though, because with the pandemic and the coronavirus and being in the midst of that, you were actually overseas in Rwanda when this whole thing started to happen, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was quite an amazing trip. My wife, Janelle, and our pastor here of Word of Life Christian Center, Pastor Chris Rue, the three of us were at a conference for an organization that I'm a part of and on the board of called Africa New Life. And it was the Refresh Conference. And for us to be over there and overseas and to be watching the news on what was going on and to see how at this point, it was at the peak of what was going on in China, and we were just starting to hear about everything happening in Europe and in Italy and Spain.
Yeah.
And there was no confirmed cases in Rwanda at the time. And so, of all places in the world, one of the smallest countries in the whole continent of Africa, we're sitting here in the one spot that had no confirmed cases. So we actually felt pretty safe at the time. And then also being at a church conference, we were high on confidence at that time of realizing that we were safe, but we also saw that in the coming days, we may have a problem in trying to get back home. And so what was designed to be about a 12-day trip ended up being cut short a day so we could try to get back to the States. And we had our staff that helps get all of the travel arrangements together, was searching long and hard to see if we had to go back through Amsterdam, which was where our original destination was, to go through Amsterdam and then get back to Atlanta. Because I think at that point, we were initially going through Boston, but the United States was canceling certain airports and saying that you could only get in through certain airports. So they actually switched our flights to fly into Atlanta. And so when we got to Amsterdam, we were able to get out of Rwanda. We got to Amsterdam. The whole entire airport was closed down except for two grab and go food locations. That was very surreal, being in the airport at that time. And it brought to memory a bunch of kind of apocalyptic type movies like World War Z and Outbreak and all of these other things, where it's just like, wow, this is really serious right now. And so for us to get on our flight, be able to make it out of there, feel like we were in good terms getting back to Atlanta, and then to be met by the CDC as we got off the airplane there and get tested. And, for me at the time, I was dealing with allergies. And of course, no one wants to hear about your allergies at a time like this. Right. So it's like trying to suppress a cough or a sneeze or anything else like that while you're, filling out the the questionnaire that the CDC wanted you to give. But I went ahead and still talked to somebody about, any of the symptoms I was having, and obviously was able to pass and get back in. But it really was really amazing seeing the difference in, I guess, how we were handling it back here in the States, where the airport ultimately, when we got back into Atlanta, was hustling and bustling and good to go, because it hadn't quite hit us yet. But even in Rwanda, before there was a confirmed case, they had hand sanitizers everywhere, going into stores, going into restaurants, going into church. I mean, they were on it. So
Hmm.
it's just, we were very grateful that we were able to get back home in time and be able to meet back up with our family and children before everything shut down. We left on a Monday in Rwanda, and by Friday, the country had shut down and said that everyone was pretty much stuck in country for 30 days. No one would be in or out. So we made
Wow.
it out by about 4 days.
Holy cow. That could have been a much different outcome if you waited even a few more days, or if that conference happened to be a couple more days later. When you got back, you looked healthy, so I presume you guys are all healthy. Did you quarantine or sort of self-quarantine
Yeah.
before pretty much the rest of this country shut down to where we all are right now as we self-quarantine?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were hearing all the news of not knowing, if you could be asymptomatic or not. And so we definitely did our part. As much as we wanted to see family and be around everyone when we first got back, we saw how important this was. So we did self-quarantine ourselves here in our house for the next 2 weeks. And I mean, that seems very painful, when you get back, and it was definitely something that none of us have ever really dealt with. And so to be back home, be with our family, we were with our kids, and we kind of prayed over them, and knew that you can't really force the kids as much to stay away from you as much as you would want to. But we definitely kept the rest of our family away from us, and are very grateful that we're through that time now, and just trying to do everything we can now to hear what all the experts are saying, and do our part to keep everybody healthy.
Yeah, it's such a weird time too. The only thing I could ever compare it to, and it's not even comparing it because it's completely different, was 9/11, and kind of going
Yeah,
through that because of the way that the world, and particularly United States of America, changed after that. Just thinking about airports and how you could go to and fro, and
right.
now that's much different. Um, do you Is that the closest thing that comes to mind for you? I know in 2001, when you were 22, I guess, doing my math here, you were still in college at Virginia Tech at that time, and what that
Yeah,
impact had. Is that the closest thing that you've seen in terms of impact on the way it's affecting so many people?
yeah, absolutely. I think when you see it as a whole, there are so many things that they're telling us to do that when you look back on it, we should have been doing these things anyway.
That's right.
There shouldn't be a reminder that we need to wash our hands everywhere we go.
Right.
However, it's a rude awakening, I think, for a lot of people, because you take it for granted. We're such in a rush, so oftentimes in our lives, that something as simple as that you fail to do, or you don't do it properly. And to know that there's certain germs that can, live on your hands or live on fabric and stuff, longer than just a moment, is something that we all have to take very seriously. And so to see all of that happen, and remembering exactly where I was on campus, and not even going to practice that day that 9/11 happened, and concerned about my brother who was working in New York City at the time.
Mm.
All of these things came to mind. And I think on one part, it's going to be better, I think, for our country. It's going to be better for the airlines, and everyone else who, I heard different things about airlines not really changing their filters as often, and they weren't, doing the air filtration on the planes, and that's stuff that you would assume and would hope is always the case, not just for this pandemic, but also just for regular things like the flu. I mean, the flu takes as many lives as, each and every year. And
Yeah.
so I'm just hoping that this will be a wake up call for many industries to do better, I guess, as far as it comes to cleanliness.
Andre Davis is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. Let's intersect the conversation with faith. Maybe tell us how your journey of faith in football began to intersect. Certainly, football, I'm guessing, has been something that's been a big part of your life from the time you were little. Where is faith and kind of how does that evolve and intersect with your football journey?
Yeah. Amazing thing about this story is that this is something I prayed for a long time. And I can remember back to being in fifth grade on the playground and, running the 50-yard dash, which is crazy now. We're still talking about yards, the 50-yard dash now. But that long ago, and being on the feet, on the track there that we were running on at the elementary school, and I remember having this conversation, just being out there. And we had just had a missionary speak to us at church. And they had the old projector, the one like the slide projector that you would have the pictures in and you would click and it would go through.
Yeah.
And I remember he had just come back from maybe Zaire. It was somewhere in Africa that he was, can't remember exactly. But I remember him having a picture of a snake that they had killed in the community and village that they were in.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking and saying, like, man, if that's what it means to be a missionary, then I don't want to have anything to do with that. Like, I don't want to be sleeping in a village. I don't want to be, in Africa like that. But at the same time, I was just like, I always wanted to be a professional athlete. And at that time, I wanted to run in the Olympics. I was more a track guy at the time, and I was playing soccer. And so I felt, and I remember asking the Lord and praying at that time, like, Lord, if you want me to be in ministry, allow it to be through my sports, whatever it is, allow me to be a professional sports athlete so I can use that as my ministry and that be my mission field. But I don't ever want to go to Africa. Like, that's not something I want to do. And, as we all know, if you've spent any time with the Lord at all, whenever you say you're never going to do something, I think I just hear God say challenge.
Yeah,
And
exactly. He just starts
he's
laughing.
like, exactly, like, oh, so that's your plan. Okay, well, I got something, something to show you as we get going. So,
Yeah.
I'm very grateful that, my parents grew me up in a Christian household. We went to church every Sunday, and I never played football growing up. That was not part of my life. I remember Pop Warner being on Sunday mornings, and there was nothing going on Sunday mornings except church. My parents weren't going to let me get out of anything else. I remember having to get dressed in the car to go to soccer tournaments where I might miss the morning games, but then we would be able to get there by the afternoon and join up with the rest of the team for soccer. And, football didn't happen for me until my junior year in high school, which is pretty late for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And for me, since I was done playing soccer, I was more of a track guy. Like I said earlier, I wanted to run track. I wanted to go to college and run track. But I needed something to do in the fall season now that I wasn't playing soccer. And so this was finally my opportunity to ask my parents if I could play football. And with both my parents being from Jamaica, football to them was what we call soccer. So football was brand new to pretty much everyone in our family. And I just thought, like, hey, maybe this will help me stay in shape as I get ready for the indoor track season. So let me find two positions on the field that I feel get hit the least, or doesn't need to have as much contact. So I chose the positions of wide receiver and free safety. Just felt like, hey, I'm fast enough. I can probably dodge people and not take the hits to keep myself healthy. And so that's kind of the introduction of football in my life. And, faith has always been there. And it's something that's just kind of I've taken with me, and grateful that my parents kind of gave me that foundation from such an early age, through high school, through my childhood, and put me and gave me a great foundation to go off to college.
Yeah, and that college journey took you to Virginia Tech. And if you're watching any clip of this on social media, you'll see the Hokies helmet literally right behind your head as we're taping this in your office there, which I love. Little point to the Virginia Tech helmet. That's right. It's funny because my colleague John Ackerman, who you met John at the conference that we were both at a couple months ago, and myself, we were in Miami for the Super Bowl. I think we told you this then, and we found ourselves watching the 30 for 30 ESPN show on Michael Vick.
Yeah.
And you were there with Mike, basically the same age. You were actually there a year before he came in. And then that 1999 team, which was such a special team for Virginia Tech as they look back and You had a fantastic season that year. Let's talk a little bit about just Virginia Tech, the time that you got to spend there, and maybe playing with someone so unique and so talented like Mike Vick, even early back in his journey when you were both, 20 years old and trying to figure out life, and yet you find yourselves on the biggest stage playing college football.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a special year. And it was, I think for anyone who can look back who's had special seasons like that, there's always a buildup. It's never something that just happens out the blue where, everything just aligns just right. But when you look back on the story, you realize like, okay, when I first got there in the fall of '97, my first experience there, we were an above average team. We were just getting our name, I think, nationally recognized. But in that bowl game, we made it to a bowl game that year and lost to a really good North Carolina team that year. I think they had like 8 guys that went in like the first 2 rounds or something that year. Their defense was tremendous. And I remember thinking like, is this the school that I really want to go to? Because we just got whooped. And it was an eye-opening experience. But I remember a lot of us as freshmen, as we were watching the game, was just like, we're going to change this. This is going to be a part of our legacy here, is that we're going to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. And so, when you see the attitude, when you see the mindset that we had, just coming in and saying, this is the work that we're going to put in to make sure that this doesn't happen again, you could see it slowly starting to build. In '98, we had another pretty decent year, but you could actually see that we were about to make that turn. We ended up beating Alabama in the Music City Bowl in Nashville. And that was the year that Michael Vick just got there, and he redshirted that year, but he traveled with us to all of the games. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember seeing him in practice, just getting there. And it was just like, we have a really good defense. And he's kind of making our guys look silly as he's running, as he gets a chance to run with the ball. And then seeing a kid come right out of high school and have kind of the arm strength that he had, you knew that he was going to be special. But now it was a matter of mentally preparing him for what was to come and what, big time college football was going to be like. And I think he had that opportunity to really learn that when he traveled with the team during that '98 year. Once again, I think everyone goes into the season believing that, hey, we're just going to take it and go 1-0. And, I think we're going to be good. We're going to be special.
Yeah.
But it's not until you actually go through those games and you have to, get out of a funk where it's not, every game's not going to be a 52-7 type game. But how do you deal with those challenges along the way? What's going on with the team? Are you guys really having that camaraderie during the season and really looking out for each other and pushing each other, with no one taking plays off, and continuing to push each other in the weight room and during all of our workouts? And as the season continued to go, we really started getting the sense that we could do something special. I think we all tried to outdo each other on the offense, the defense, special teams. We all knew that at any point in time, you could have that momentum shift. And I think that was the one thing that really pushed us, was that as we continued to perform well on offense, the defense would look for ways to, get the ball, to sack the quarterback better, to put pressure on the other team's offense. And we always had some, one side of the ball would always want to try to outdo the other. And when you had that kind of going on throughout the whole game of trying
Yeah.
to show up each other, it really made something special happen. And so to have that season to, I don't know, I mean, even personally, I think I averaged like 27 yards a catch that year, which is
I was
like
looking up your
ridiculous.
stats, dude. It was, yeah, it was more than 25 yards a catch. Let's just put it that way. That's crazy.
So,
That's a lot of deep
to
balls,
have that,
Andre. That's a lot of deep balls.
that's a lot of deep balls. Yeah, I think it was like halfway through the season. No, I think that was, oh man, I can't remember if it was that season or going into the following season. But like I had like 11 touchdowns at that point, and I was averaging 49 yards per touchdown, which is
Wow.
like, okay, we were just throwing the ball, and it really was just like a track meet for us out there, just running by people. But what I loved the most was how we all would continue to be close together, and we really were a team. And uh, there's nothing like it. It's something that we're always going to remember. It's something that we fell just short. And I think for all of those teams that have ever made it to a national championship game and fallen short, you realize how much it kind of irks you for the years and years to come, because you never know if you're ever going to make it back again. And we weren't, but it's something that we hope that Virginia Tech and the current coach there, Justin Fuente, hopefully they'll be able to get it done sometime soon.
There you go. Give me your favorite memory during your time at Virginia Tech, on field. Maybe it's off field too, but like on field, you played in a lot of big games, and certainly you only really you had 2 seasons with Michael Vick, I saw, and you lost 2 games in 2 seasons. So that's
Yeah.
pretty good 2 years there. What's your favorite memory? What stands out?
So I would say there's two.
Okay.
One would be catching the first touchdown for us in the national championship game against Florida State. I think that's a dream that any player that plays college football is to play on the biggest stage, and then to be able to have a highlight in that game was something that was very memorable. But ultimately, I think my kind of my aha moment was in 2001, the following year. No, not 2001, 2000. The following year, we were playing against West Virginia
Yep.
on a Thursday night game, ESPN Thursday night game. And I
Sure.
want to say at that time, once again, showing my age, that was the only Thursday night game on. It
I
wasn't
believe you're
like they had,
correct. Yeah.
they didn't have the multiple games going on at that time. And so, hey, everyone's watching. This is the one game that's on, and everyone's watching. And it was a close game through the first half. I think we were maybe ranked second or third in the country at the time. Um, and it was a close game. So West Virginia is thinking that they're going to come into Blacksburg, into Lane Stadium, and they're going to try and pull off the upset. And so we have, the second half to get going and try and turn this thing around. And I had probably, my greatest game as a football player ever, where it started off with a 30-yard reverse for a touchdown. The defense went out there. They went like 3 and out. And then Mike and I connected on a 65-yard touchdown. Um, West Virginia got the ball again. I think they went another 3 and out and punted the ball back to us. And then I took that one for like a 73-yard punt return for a touchdown on 3 consecutive possessions that we had. So
Nice.
to be able to do that in a national stage, on TV, it was an amazing time, an amazing experience. Something that every time I go back to Virginia Tech, people continue to bring that up as one of their best memories that they had. So um, great memory, and grateful that I had the opportunity to give that to all of our fans.
Andre Davis is joining us here on Sports Spectrum. I want to ask you, I don't want to brush over your NFL career. That's not fair. And you had a long career. You have had 8 years there that you played from 2002 to 2009. Um, and, had a lot of success. You were with Cleveland, New England, Buffalo, and Houston. Um, More of a generic question on that. How would you describe your NFL career based upon when you came into the league? You were a second round draft pick by the Browns. Well, as you look back now, it was, anytime you get in the league more than 3 years, you've already exceeded the average player. And you got 9 or 8 years in. What was your NFL career like when you look back and describing it?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm gonna squeeze in that I got 9 years, because my final year, even though I was on IR, it counts as a credited year.
Okay, there you go. It counts. Hey.
So I've got to put that in there. Like, yes, I was on the field for 8 years, but that ninth year counts for credit and benefits. So that's very
Well, and
important.
that's actually going to lead
Uh,
into the next question in a minute, but
right.
go ahead. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, I would definitely say, like many people, you look at the NFL, and I think everyone would like to think that it's just smooth sailing throughout your NFL career, and that it's a joy everywhere you go, and it's just a fun time, and just so great to be at the peak of your professional career field. But for me, it was definitely a roller coaster ride. Um, you know, it, I think the dream that everyone has is to be a first round pick, become a starter, be a starter your whole entire career, and you just go from, playing out each and every contract, getting all of your money, and then being able to retire on your own, after a Super Bowl win. Like that,
Right.
that
Yep.
would be the dream for everybody. Um, but I had times, once again, to go with basic drive through with my whole career is being a second round draft pick. You have high expectations, not only for yourself, but the team and the city that you're drafted to has high expectations for you. And so I was able to play well in Cleveland, for at least 2 years, ended up having some injuries. Had the opportunity to tie an NFL record by having a 99-yard touchdown reception from Jeff Garcia when we were there in Cleveland.
Yeah.
But then, when things change, obviously, when the team doesn't do well, we made the playoffs my very first year as a rookie. And, I love to joke with people to say that, hey, for Cleveland, that was the last time that they've been to the playoffs, was when we were there. So that's a nice little trivia nugget for everybody.
Nice.
But then the following year, we went, I think it was 5-11, and then we went 4-12. And so, whenever you have those type of bad seasons, that there's going to be change. And that's when, our coaches got fired and left. And I think Romeo Crennel came in to lead the charge. And this was the first time that it really started getting, tough, of realizing like, all right, this really is a business on what's going on. I saw a bunch of other guys that were starters for our team either get traded or get released. And even though I may have felt that they were great leaders that we had for our team, they obviously didn't fit with the new, coaching regime and what they wanted to do. And so as we got going, we went through the off-season schedule. At the beginning of actually the third game of training camp, I got traded from Cleveland to the New England Patriots.
Mm.
That was something for anyone who's been out there, former players, or even those who haven't been in the NFL. Being traded is really one of the toughest things that you can go through, especially if you have family or are married at the time, and trying to make that adjustment. I think if you're traded in the off season early, then you have time to build that camaraderie with your teammates, learn the playbook, and go from there. But being traded after the third preseason game, it pretty much gives you a week and a half to try and learn the whole entire playbook and still make the team and get ready for, week one of the season. And so that became something that was very, hard for me to do. I actually ended up getting hurt in the final preseason game with New England, which then New England ended up releasing me for a couple of weeks while I got healthy and got better, and then they brought me back. So I'm very grateful that Coach Belichick was a man of his word when he said that if I got once I got healthy, he would bring me back onto the team. Just being able to be there, be able to learn under Coach Belichick, under Tom Brady, and the great players that they had there, Deion Branch, David Givens. That they had the reigning champs at the time. They had just won the Super Bowl the year before. So by the time I got there, they were already a well-oiled machine. But one of the things that really helped keep me settled was getting a chance to know a guy by the name of Don Davis, who has become a really good friend, and he's part of our Pro Athletes Outreach family.
Yeah.
And just being able to really talk to him during that time about the transition of what we had that was going on. My wife and I had just been married for about a year at that point. She had just graduated from veterinary school down at Virginia Tech at the Virginia Maryland School of Veterinary Medicine. She was working for, I think, a month and a half in Cleveland when I got traded to New England. And so for her, she was just like, I'm not going to make that move right now. Like, I finally found a great mentor. I found a great opportunity for myself in Cleveland. Um, you know, you're good. You're in training camp. You're going to be doing all of that stuff. So let me stay here for now, and then I'll come, on game weekends and come see you. And when she saw how tough the transition was for me, she realized and prayed about it as well, and said, you know what, I've got to be with my husband. This is not going to be a lifelong thing. So I need to make sure that, I'm with him and giving him the strength that he needs to be able to, make it through. And so to have the one season there in New England, and then go to Buffalo on another 1 year deal, feeling that this would be a great opportunity for me, for all of the players who go through free agency and are looking for new teams. You always pick a team thinking that, hey, this is where I feel there's going to be an opening for me, and I really feel that I can be of use and maybe beat out some of the players that are there to make a difference for the team. And when I got there, I realized that it maybe wasn't the best choice.
Mm.
And I kind of barely made the team and played special teams that whole entire year. For anybody who's going out there and you think that you know it's just really tough to go out there feeling that you can make a difference, as a wide receiver, and then them say like, no, you know what, we're good there. You can play special teams, and if you don't want to play special teams, then guess what? You're going to have to find somewhere else to go. So you really have to put your pride down at the time. You have to be confident uh, in who you are and who God made you to be, and you not let your pride get to you and say, I feel I deserve this. And because of that, you might miss out on an opportunity. And so for me to kind of take that step back and realize, you know what, um, with a little bit less responsibility of not having to play as much offense, this gave me a great opportunity to actually get healthy and prepare myself in a different way. So mentally, I think I was able to grow during that time when I was in Buffalo. And then it gave me an opportunity again to be a free agent the following year. Um, but during that next off season, it probably was my toughest off season I ever had. My wife and I had an ectopic pregnancy in the
Hmm.
off season while we were trying to make a decision on where to go next. We didn't really have too many phone calls coming in because I was just a special teams player at that time. And so Buffalo was willing to bring me back as a special teams player. But I felt that, um, when you look around and you see what wide receivers are getting paid compared to what special teams players are getting paid, you feel like, you know what, I need to give this another go.
Sure.
I want to be able to, I feel that I have enough talent, I have enough skill and experience to be able to be, on somebody's team as a receiver, and feel like that would really help set my family up. And so we got a phone call from the Houston Texans at the time. And, we said, you know what, instead of going back and saying that I'm just going to be a special teams guy in Buffalo, I want to try and give this one more go. But I also realized at that point that it was starting to wear on me, both mentally and emotionally, that I felt that, if this doesn't work out here, then this might be, the end. I need to start thinking about what to do in my second career. And so when we first got there in Houston, I was grateful that I was out of the cold weather. I was no longer in Cleveland, New England, or Buffalo, that I finally got some nice weather down in Houston. And as hot as Houston is, it took those many years for me to finally thaw out from those cold weather teams. Um, and as I got there, I loved the team, but once again, the situation didn't turn out like how I had researched it. I think many times we research things and you make the best decision you can with the information you have. But there's times that, it may not work out to what you thought, but you still have to make the best of that opportunity. And so when I got there, once again, I kind of barely made the team, but I dealt with something for the first time that I'd never dealt with in my career, and that I did not dress for the first two games.
Mm.
That's something that's very hard. This was going into my sixth year, I think. So as a sixth-year veteran, for you to not dress and have to, be in your street clothes or sweats for the beginning of a game, that it's just a matter of time before they feel they can get somebody cheaper and younger to replace you. And so at that moment, I was, this was definitely a faith walk for myself and my wife to figure out really what we wanted to do. And I think at that point, the Lord just told me, it's time for you to give back. It's been all about you, at this point, and you've been thinking about what can you do more for you. Now it's time for you to kind of feed back into the younger players that are here. At that time in Houston, there was no couples Bible study. So my wife and I decided that we wanted to start that up. And so for me, we had just drafted a young player by the name of Jacoby Jones out
Yeah.
of the second round as a receiver. And it was one of those things that, you know what, he was going to get that playing time over me because he was a new draft pick. And, you know, the GM and the coach, they wanted to prove to everybody that they made the right choices. So I fully understood that. And I used that opportunity to be able to take my experience that I had both on the field and spiritually to really try and give back to the team, to try and be a mentor to some of the younger players and really just build into the team with the experience that God had given me. And it was amazing to see kind of the turnaround when my perspective changed on that. Once again, not to ever say that I prayed for anyone to get hurt, but it just so happened that after God kind of really gave me peace about the situation in Houston and realizing that if this was the end, then I'm going to go out with a bang. I'm going to make sure that, you know, people understand who I am as a man of faith on the team and as a guy who's going to be able to give back and really help those around him. Our star wide receiver at the time, Andre Johnson, ended up getting hurt. He had a knee injury against the Carolina Panthers. And so that gave me an opportunity now to get dressed for the following game. In the following game, they ended up putting Jacoby in front of me in the position that I should have been in. They took him from the one side and then brought him over to the other side so he could start, which also felt like, oh, all right, well, maybe I'm, you know, not quite ready just yet. And then in that game against the Indianapolis Colts, he ended up dislocating his shoulder. And so now it was just like, hey, we're running out of wide receivers. You know, you got to play me now.
Right.
And I ended up playing really well and really showed the coaches and the team what I was capable of. And it got to the point where they realized, like, hey, man, we've got something special here, and we can't put Andre back on the bench again. We've got to find different ways to get him out there on the field. So
Yeah.
even when those guys got healthy and got back out there, they gave me the starting kick returner job. And you know, after having a solid season as a wide receiver, and then having a solid year as a kickoff returner, the final game of that year, once again, this is going into a contract year. I ended up returning 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns in a single game, which also tied an NFL record. And to be able to end a season like that is probably the greatest thing that, you know, anybody going into a free agency year can think of, because, you know, at that point, like, all right, I'm going to get phone calls now. This is going to be a fun off season because there's going to be people who really want you, and there's an opportunity that, you know, financially you're going to be able to really set your family up for life. And
That's good.
so just to see how God had kind of brought us through this whole story, to see how you go from a second round draft pick to getting traded to not playing on offense for a whole entire year, only playing special teams, to making the team, but not even dressing for 2 games, but to stay faithful through all of that, and to not only, you know, stop trusting in God, but trust him even more at the lowest point that you think is going to be the end. And God say, now you're ready. Now I see where, you know, you've gone through all of the things I need you to in order to give you the success that you now have. And so that to me is just once again, a wonder of God's grace and his mercy and his plan to just continue to stick with him through the thick and thin, through the ups and downs, and to know that even though when you look back on my career and people may call me a journeyman and, you know, my whole career was kind of a roller coaster ride, God was my constant through that whole thing. And he was the one who kept me stable and secure, knowing who I am, who he made me to be, to know that I am I am a Jesus follower, and that this was just an athletic experience that I was having, and how I needed to use this platform to be able to give glory to him for everything that happened. That's kind of what my whole NFL career was all about.
No, that's awesome. And so thanks for sharing that and going through that. I think, you know, the ups and downs, your answer right there really was a testament to what the life is like. And that was a long answer, but that's what we want here, because I think it gives people an idea of what the crazy life of being an NFL player really is like, the ups and downs, the mental battle, the physical battle, trying to get jobs, maybe being better than certain people, but, you know, just not being able to get that time on the field. I really want to pivot here, though,
Yeah.
Andre. Post career, post NFL playing career for you has not been easy. You've been and went through many battles. Can you kind of share what that process was like? You were telling us this story at the conference we were at out in California a couple months ago, and I was blown away by this. And I'm guessing, you know, your story is unique to you, but I'm guessing this is very common, unfortunately, among a lot of players that have to battle with injuries and things that kind of can't go away post NFL career because you throw your body into that crazy battle every week for so many years. Tell us about what that's been like for you post NFL career and some of the injuries you've been battling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my career ended. I dislocated my hip in a preseason game in 2010. And as I said earlier, I was on injury reserve for the rest of that year. I had a double microfracture surgery after
Mm,
that injury. Tried coming back from that. And when the Texans released me in January of 2011, um, I was pretty much damaged goods at that point and was trying to figure out, all right, what do I need to do with my life moving forward here? I was continuing to try and get healthy. This also happened to be the year that the CBA was up, and so we were, I guess,
yeah.
on strike, or we were waiting for everything to go. So we couldn't do any rehab back at the facilities. There was nothing. We were on our own to get right, and so to have a major surgery and try and come back from that and not have, you know, a team of people being able to help you with that I think to me is what led to the end of my career kind of happening. One of the things that really I think hurt me the most was that as I was dealing with pain, many of us always deal with pain, but we don't know how to really communicate that, especially with our wives, our spouses, who are at home and taking care of the house when we're out there trying to, you know, earn a living for our families. And so to go from having that football mindset of getting ready for the game, getting ready for the off season, and getting ready to go, it all of a sudden switched in a moment and was like, all right, I need you to be dad now. You need to be at home. We had two young children at the time, and as I didn't realize how much pain I was going through,
Mm,
because my wife kept on, you know, she's like, hey, let's go to the zoo. Let's go, you know, go somewhere. Let's get out and do something. And I would always say no, like, I don't want to do that. And it wasn't for the fact that I didn't want to be with them. I wasn't communicating with her that my hip was in so much pain that I didn't want to put myself out there and, you know, have to be walking around in pain. And so it really wasn't for months and almost, you know, years later that she ever um, really confessed to me that she was considering um, leaving me to go back with her mom back at home, not to divorce me, but just to give me a break, because she was like, I felt that everything that me and the boys were doing was just making it worse.
mm,
And we never had that communication together to kind of deal with, like, what does pain actually do to you? You know, mentally, yes, we can get over it. We've been learned to play with pain. You learn to deal with it. You learn to say, like, all right, I can't let anyone else see me in pain, because then that's weakness, and that might cause me to lose my job or cause coaches not to think I can play through pain. So when you're told that from the moment you first start playing football to, you know, you get to this highest level, you learn to kind of put those thoughts and those feelings down underneath. The problem with that is that when it comes to relationships outside of football, that's not healthy at all, for any of us to really suppress those feelings and those emotions that we have, because it ends up affecting those around us. And so to get to the point of being in pain, working through the communication with my wife, it actually got to the point that my hip got worse and I had to second opinion again. And I ended up getting a hip replacement almost a year from that first hip surgery.
mm.
And so one of the things my wife tells me is that from the moment I woke up from that hip surgery with the hip replacement, I was pretty much still recovering from the anesthesia. But she said my first words were, I don't feel the pain anymore. And
Mm.
so to go through all of that and to realize that even after a major surgery of a joint replacement like the hip, that I felt that much better,
Yeah.
you know, where I literally felt like I could stand up off of the bed and walk. It made me realize how much pain I was actually in, you know, for that last year and what I was actually putting my wife through. And so to deal with that and to see that as each year that's passed, how different things start to creep up, whether it be, you know, back injuries, little neck things, ribs, things that have, you know, that you've played through, and because of your workout schedule, you're pretty much able to hide all of those things based off of your muscle tone and your workout schedule. You're able to keep your body, you know, operating at a high level. But for a lot of guys, when you get done playing, you want to be able to take a break because you realize you don't necessarily have to do that
Yeah.
anymore. But you have this moment where you realize, like, if I'm not working out, I actually feel worse than when I am. So I almost need to work out just as a maintenance thing, just to be able to feel good from a physical standpoint and mentally. It's nice because it gives you an out. It gives you an ability to put. It's almost like a stress reliever, I would say. And so that's something that becomes a part of daily life, but it also becomes hard because you're trying to figure out, well, what do I do with the rest of my life now? And how does me maintaining my body have to do with finding another job or finding another career, and finding out what is my purpose outside of football. Um, and so I think that's where there's been anxiety, there's been depression, there's been many things that a lot of us don't like to talk about. Whether it's you don't want other people to know that you're struggling with these things, um, or not. You know, you're just trying to put on a mask. I think many of us put on a mask and don't realize that it's not really helping your situation. It's just covering up insecurities that we all have. And I think the more we can open up about those things, you'll realize that there's other people that are going through those same things. And you could be a great testament, and a great example to share with people how to get through these things. And the more we can talk about it, the more we can help each other make it through those tough times.
Mm. Your back caused a lot of issues recently too, right? For you, I think I was talking to you at that conference about some of the things that you were going through rehab wise just in the past few years, and thinking,
Yeah,
my goodness, no person should ever be going through what you went through. Can you kind of, maybe in a Cliff Notes version, kind of give everybody a taste of what that was like, what this has been like the last few years with your back?
absolutely. So my last year was the 2010 season. Like I said, 2011, I had my hip replacement. And so now here we are. We're in 2020 now, but in, what was this? When were we? Do you remember when we were in Arizona, Jason? Was that
2018.
2018?
Yeah.
2018.
Yep.
So I started having some neck issues. I was going to a chiropractor. I was trying to do my regular maintenance things to keep my body in order, but I started having a numbing sensation down my neck, and that was going down my right arm, like down my tricep, and was getting weakness in my right hand. And I was trying to figure out what this was. You know, I don't think I had any pinched nerves, or any herniated disc or anything else like that. And
Mm.
so I was just doing my regular maintenance to try and get this going. You know, so we're now looking at like 7 years post career, and it kept on getting worse. And so I started seeing some specialists. Everyone was saying they didn't see anything. There was no nerve blockage or anything else like that. But I was like, well, I know what I'm feeling. I know the pain is real. Like this, you might say that you don't see anything. I just means I have to probably go find another doctor or somebody else, because this pain is real and it's starting to affect the way I'm living life. And so they ended up giving me different pain meds, gave me a couple of different ones. There was a nerve block to muscle relaxers to, I can't even remember. I think there was 3 different ones that I was on.
Yeah.
And they kind of all came to an head after the conference in Arizona, the Pro Athletes Outreach Conference we had in Arizona, where the conference had just ended. we were on the bus on the way back to the airport, and I just started having just this really crucial nausea feeling. And I couldn't tell what it was. I wasn't sure if I was getting sick. I wasn't sure if it was because of the meds or what was going on. But we got on the airplane and we were going from, I guess, Arizona to Denver, and then Denver to Philadelphia before
Mm,
we headed home. And on the plane from Arizona to Denver, I pretty much had a breakdown. Um, Sitting on the plane, I would have nausea, but then every time I stood up and went to the back of the plane, uh, just this excruciating pain was going down my neck and my arm.
mm,
I couldn't separate the two, no matter what I did, sitting down or standing up. You're getting one or the other. Either you feel like you're going to be that guy that throws up on a plane, or you're standing up and you're feeling like, I can't even explain the pain that was going through.
mm,
But I literally broke down. It got to the point where I was crying on the pain. I was crying on the plane because of the pain. We had to call a doctor to the back of the plane to find out what exactly was going on. It was a mixture of the pain that I was feeling, but then also the mixture of the medication that I was on, which was causing all sorts of different bad things. And so when we touched down in Denver, I ended up having to be taken by ambulance to a hospital in Denver to take care of things. So grateful at that time that we had friends that were in Denver. Believe it or not, there's another guy by the name of Andre Davis. Shout out to Andre, who's
yep.
a great friend of mine. He was a linebacker. We were both drafted the same year in Cleveland. Him and his wife Monique were in Denver, and they actually met us at the airport or at the hospital when we got there. And they really kind of helped us through there. I ended up having to spend the night in the hospital and get right. But that to me was one of the scariest moments, because it was in that moment of pain that I realized other people who deal with chronic pain, where your mindset goes to when you're in that sense, where
Mhm.
you're almost willing to do anything, and do anything to get rid of the pain. To me, I'm very grateful that I have a wife, a woman of faith, who was able to pray over me that whole entire time. Have a pastor that called and prayed over me. To have friends in Denver that were there to pray over me and help me through that time. I can't imagine those who are having to suffer through chronic pain or any other um, disability like these by themselves. And so I think that's why it's so much more important for us to be able to open up about these things when it happens to us, not to suffer these things by yourself, alone. There are people out there who have gone what you go through or are going what you go through. And if you never get an opportunity to open up your mouth and say that you've been there, they're going to feel that they're going through this all by themselves. So I think God allows these things to kind of sometimes happen to us so that way, as we make it through, as we go through the process of these issues, we can bring hope and bring security in the midst of this, and know that God will see us through, and to be there and support others who go through these things.
Mm. Well, I'm glad you're better, and
Yeah.
it's good things have started to come around. But that is just, I feel for you when I hear you tell that story. Just thinking what that must have been like to go through it. All right, last question as we wind down and close here. What's the Lord showing you now? What's He teaching you? What's He showing you in this season of life that you're in right now? You mentioned 2020 way back in the beginning of the interview about coming back from Rwanda. So you're home, you're safe, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. What's God been showing you?
Yeah. God has shown me really my purpose, and what he's called me to in this second half of life. Um, I think a lot of people think that when, you make it to the NFL, then that's it. And, if you're able to do what you're supposed to with your money and save your money from a financial standpoint, put your family in a good position, then that's it. You just live off of your money for the rest of your life and that's it. But, you know, God willing, early 30s maybe when you retire from football. So,
Yeah.
I don't plan on the Lord taking me, that early or anytime soon. So, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And for me, I think God showed me and gave me the platform to be able to serve. Um, I've just been so grateful with kind of the platform that he's given me through professional sports, through football, where that is a great icebreaker. It's a great thing to have conversations with people about, but it's even better to share with them what God has brought me to from that. And so, a quote I really like to use a lot of times, I think the first time I heard it was from Rick Warren, a great author. Um, is that how can you turn your success into significance?
Mm.
And for me, it was a matter of, for many of us in this world, we look at the NFL or we look at celebrities and we say that that is the epitome of success. But for everyone who has ever done those careers, you realize that that success sometimes comes to an end sooner than you would want it to. And what can you do with that? You don't want to live in the past and continue having to talk to people about what happened in the past. You want to be able to say, all right, what's my vision for the future? How can I use this to make a difference to those around me, my spheres of influence that God has given me over time? And God has really been able to show me and present me with different opportunities to be able to use this for his glory. So now I see myself, I am now the director of student athlete support and community engagement at my alma mater at Virginia Tech. So I'm able to go back there at least 8 to 10 times a year, whether it be in Blacksburg or other Virginia Tech events around the Maryland, Virginia area, and speak into the lives of recruits, student athletes, donors, alumni, keep people engaged in the university, and share my life experiences being a student athlete at Virginia Tech, and what my life looked like through the different transitions from being, a high school athlete into college, what time management and stuff looks like in college, how you make that transition from college to a professional sport, then even making that transition again from a professional sport into the rest of your life.
Yeah.
These are all different areas that I think the student athletes need to really hear and understand, so that they realize that your journey is going to continue, and this is a great opportunity for you to build the right foundation and the right contacts that's going to really help you out for the rest of your life. Um, in doing that, I've also become a part of the Virginia Tech Campaign Steering Committee, which I say that the director of student athlete support and community engagement is my athletic side, but
Right.
then on the academic side and being able to help the campaign steering committee raise money and engage alumni and helping where Virginia Tech is going to go to the future, and making sure that as a university, we're continuing to prepare our students to be difference makers, not only, in the state and in our country, but all around the world. So that's been a great opportunity to do that and serve on that board.
It's good.
I'm also on the board of Africa New Life, as we talked about in Rwanda,
Yeah.
and Africa New Life exists to transform lives. At the core, it's through educational sponsorships, but it's also through community development, um, growing faith, and then also in a healthy body. African New Life, they love to transform lives through using two hands. This is how our founder, Charles Magisha, explains it, through using two hands, through sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ, and through acts of compassion.
Mm.
You need to have those two together, especially in a country like Rwanda that's been pretty much um, really ruined by the genocide, which just happened a little over 20 years ago. When you've got people who are in extreme poverty, if you can't help their basic needs, a lot of them don't want to hear about the name of Jesus.
Right.
And so to be able to give them acts of compassion and say that we're going to be here for you, we want to educate you, we want to bring you up out of this poverty, it now gives you an opportunity to share with them the gospel of Jesus Christ. So to be able to transform lives in that, and be a part of that, has been absolutely amazing. I've been a part of them. I made my first trip to Rwanda in 2014. Since then, me and my wife have been back 5 times. We helped raise funds for a hospital. It started off as a clinic, but through God's grace, we've been able to have matching funds and raised enough money to turn it from a clinic into the second largest private hospital in the whole country of Rwanda.
Hmm.
We have over 10,000 sponsored children there now in Rwanda, and it's just been an amazing thing that God has shown us. That every time we go over there, seeing that this is a organization that was founded and run by Rwandans, it's not just us as Americans coming over and feeling like we're the saviors in any sort of way, but it's us being able to partner with them in what they're doing and helping them um, uh, get out of the poverty and share the gospel of Jesus Christ in the midst of that, as well as developing their communities and helping really change what's going to happen for that country for generations.
Hmm.
I think a lot of that is very similar to being on the board as well of Pro Athletes Outreach. And really seeing how we can transform the athletes and couples in becoming disciples of Jesus Christ, as well as them positively impacting their spheres of influence and using their platform as football players, baseball players, basketball and hockey
Yeah.
soon, and helping them really make positive impacts. We have such a platform here in America and around the world for us to be able to get together and really be able to strengthen ourselves in this and be able to present to the world what it means to be a Jesus follower who's having an athletic experience. That's really something that's very powerful that I think we all can have. And so to be able to serve in these capacities, I'm very grateful that the Lord gave me a great story for football, but I'm even more excited for the story that he has for me moving forward for the rest of our life, to be able to raise four lovely kids that we have here, Dalen, Bryce, Layla, and Noel, to be able to serve alongside my wife, Janelle, going on 17 years next month, of marriage. Like, these are the things that I'm really excited about, and seeing that this will never stop. The ability to help others is never going to stop. Uh, those are opportunities that will always be available. So I'm trying to keep my eyes open and praying that the Lord would continue to work on my story, that we would continue to um, stay in His Word, and
Yeah.
then also be able to just be able to tell my story to more people and give God the glory for everything that happens, in my past and in my future.
He is Andre Davis, former NFL wide receiver, and lots of great things happening in this man's life. So grateful for your story, Andre. Thanks for coming on the show, for sharing it all with us, and we wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much again for this opportunity, Jason. Have a good one.